Hey everybody, this is Ibarionex from the Candid Frame, and I just got back from Miami from attending the Miami Street Photography Festival where I taught a 2-day workshop, but I also met some amazing photographers and saw some fantastic imagery. So if you've never attended, it's too late to go this year, but next year in December, you should go. You should make time because they had photographers from all over the world. I met people from South America, Central America, Europe, maybe a couple from Asia, and it was just if you're into street photography, you gotta go. So you'll find links for it below in the notes so you can find out a little about what you missed, and hopefully you can make plans to be there next year. Now, one of the things that I did there was teach a workshop. And one of the principles that I taught was this idea of fixed and fluid. This idea that there are fixed elements in a scene that are not going to move. And that allows you to build your composition. And we've talked about that in some of the videos that we've done here. This idea of finding a setting, a stage upon which you can start building your composition and then allow a human figure to come in and sort of complete the shot. But I wanted to take that idea beyond the simplistic, move beyond simply just finding an interesting background and waiting for someone to move through it. And so I chose 3 images that progressively sort of explain how you can take that idea one step further each time. So let's take a look at the pictures. Oh, but before we do, a lot of people have been asking me about, when am I scheduling workshops? Because some people want to study with me in person. I haven't finalized the schedule yet, but if you visit thecandidframe.com and go up here to newsletter, you can subscribe for our email and our mailing list, and it's there that you'll find out exactly where I'm going to be scheduled. Right now, there are plans for me to be in Los Angeles and in Washington D.C. I may also be in Japan and elsewhere. But if you want to keep up to date and you want to study with me, subscribe for the mailing list. And if you do, you receive 3 free copies of previously published ebooks, including one on street photography. So go to thecandidframe.com, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up to date with everything that we're doing. First, we have our first image by Stefano Scapin. This was created, I think, with a Leica M7. No XF data here because it was shot on film. So this photograph exemplifies this idea of finding setting first. Here is a scene with very graphic scene with lines and shapes and light and shadow and reflected light, and it's a great setting, right? You don't have just a simple wall that's parallel to the plane of the camera. Here you have this progression that is guided by the presence of light and shadow and this repetition of line and pattern that pervades the shot. And this is the kind of scene I'm always looking for myself and suggesting to my students, where you create a photograph or a composition that even without a person becomes interesting, because you're relying here on light and shadow, line and shape, and sometimes color, but not in this case. So you have those graphic elements which allow you to start playing around with your composition even before a subject comes into the scene. And when you're able to take the time, you can really refine your vision for the scene. You can decide to include, this window frame here on the side, or consider the separation between this building and that building and the building on the right and the shadow here. You can slowly figure out your position. And once you've done that, it's just a matter of waiting for a human figure to come in to complete the shot, which Stefano does here. And this is the idea of fixed and fluid. All these physical elements in terms of the buildings, those are fixed. They're not moving. They're not going anywhere. The only thing that may move or change may be the light. And you can see the light that's coming from this direction being reflected off a window and being reflected here on the wall. That may change if it's a slightly overcast day and there may be cloud cover. As the clouds pass over the sun, this might change. This light might disappear. But if it's a bright sunny day, everything will remain the same, and only as time moves on will this light change. But for the purpose of a photograph, a photographer can just stay fixed in this place. Once they've found their composition, and just play it out. Allow the scene to play out and watch as a variety of different people come into the scene and figure out exactly where in the frame they want them in order to complete the composition. The placement here is perfect, right? Because you have this person filling in an area that would be largely negative space. Their shadow and their body serves as a great counterpoint to all the other elements in the frame, especially since this is a black and white. His dark clothing complements the darker tones that exist throughout the frame. So it's an image that really, really works. But the great thing about a scene like this is that you don't have to settle for just one shot. You can allow different people to move through the scene and explore it until, say, the light changes, and then that scene is no longer what it was. It becomes something completely different. But this is the kind of scene, the kind of stage upon which practically any street photographer can find and work and shoot until they get something that they're pleased with. And the luxury of time, it affords you to refine all of your choices, from going horizontal, going vertical, moving closer, moving further back, using a different focal length. You don't have to be rushed. You can really take your time and build the best composition possible. Now here we have a shot by Sayan Mukherjee. This was created with a Fujifilm X-T1 at 180th of a second, f8 at 1250th of a second. So here we have a shot similar to the one before. Largely, it's architectural. We have these homes or these businesses and these doors and these windows and these electrical lines that pervade the entire frame. So here we have a setting of fixed points. But we also have two human figures who are seated in their respective places who are also fixed. So it's not just buildings and structures that can be fixed points. It can also be human beings. If they're seated or standing somewhere doing whatever, you can consider them just as much graphic elements as all the other physical objects within the frame. And that allows you that much more to play with, right? The human figures, they provide scale. They provide a sense of relationship, human relationship, between themselves and the elements around them, making for a little more interesting picture. This becomes more than just, a architectural shot or just a travel shot where you're just photographing buildings. You're including people. And there are some slight gestures in terms of the woman in the back who's stretching her left arm as if she's like raising the sleeve up to her upper arm, while this other woman is sorting through whatever material is in her doorway. Now, this is a real interesting shot. I like the symmetry between all the lines and shapes and the mirroring between the two women in the frame. But to my thinking, when I see something like this, I see that the architecture and the women are fixed points. They may move slightly, but they're going to remain there for a little while. And while I would make this shot, the question I always ask myself is, could it be better? Because when you have the benefit of both human and objects that are fixed, you have time to shoot, to make all the choices for your composition. And once you get this shot, you have to think, is there a way of making it better? Would someone walking through the scene or bicycling through the scene add an element that might take the shot one step further? Because these women are likely not going to move in the immediate future. So you have them. You have the flexibility of being able to slightly refine your compositions, but man, there could be something else that could come in here. And having a human figure turning the corner and being in this location here might be interesting. And if you give yourself permission to just stick around and linger and explore and not rush off to the next photograph, something just might happen. Something might not. But when you have something that's this close it's always a good idea to wait. Because as nice as this image is, it doesn't surprise me. There's nothing there that really sort of, arrests my attention completely. Nicely composed, makes good use of line and shape, the diffused light. But could there have been something more that might have surprised the photographer visually? And I think that if you're patient enough, you just may get that surprise. And while you already have this shot, you just might get something better. Next, we have a shot by Juliette Cottington. This was created with a Fujifilm X-T2 at 3/20th of a second, f/14 ISO 400. Now, here we have a photograph where we have this boy who is squatting down and looks like he has a little bit of twine or rope that is secured to one or more of the chickens in the foreground in the lower left-hand corner. And then there's this play of light and shadow in the back. So, to my eye, those are fixed elements in the shot. It seems because this boy is squatting, he's going to be there for a bit. Now, the fluid things are twofold here, maybe even three. One is obviously the chicken in the foreground, and the other one is the man in the background who is bending over to pick up something. Now, when you look at a scene like this, obviously it's going to be changing from second to second. But the idea is that fluidity of those second and third elements add the potential of something really interesting happening. So you squat down, you compose the boy, and you look at the play of light and shadow. You sort of just find your composition. And once you do that, you just stick to it. Because I love this triangle of light and shadow that happens in the back of the wall, and the triangle created by this boy's arms and legs, and it's just really nice. The light, obscures his eyes, relegating them to shadow, which it doesn't really bother me because this is a very sort of graphic shot. But the things that are fluid are the chicken and the man in the background. There's a third man in the background in the shade, and I don't know whether he's just standing there or going to move through the scene. But I'm just going to assume, for all intents and purposes, that he's just standing there. So he may be another fixed point, but because he's relegated to shadow, he's not really a big consideration. But the chicken and the man in the background certainly are. And as you're there photographing, it's important to pay attention to both. Right? The boy's fixed, the light's fixed, but the chicken and the man aren't. And so as the chicken is moving its head, darting it up and down, back and forth, in and out of the frame, and the man is bending down to pick up whatever he's going to pick up and then rise up, there is a moment of potential synergy, of synchronicity probably is a better word, in which all of them sort of come into play. And I think it does in this photograph that Julia created. I like how they all sort of play off of each other. But here's the thing about creating a shot like this. When you find your composition and you know that it's right and it's nicely balanced, you can't compromise your composition for the sake of your subject. Because a mistake that could have happened here is because the chicken was moving in and out, the photographer could have shifted the camera in order to make sure that the chicken is in the frame. But at that point, if they had shifted the camera to the right in order to keep the chicken in the shot, they would have lost this man, or they might have cut off the arm here. Also, the other is also true. If the photographer, in this case Julia, had tried to compensate for the movement of the man as he moved back and up, the chicken might not be in the frame, or just its beak. Once you find your composition and you know it's right, you have to stick to it. Because as soon as you start adjusting yourself in order to prioritize the subject over your composition, you've lost the shot. You have to trust yourself that that composition is the most effective thing that you've come up with, and not sacrifice it in order to keep one or two subject elements in the frame. And it's tough to do that. And I've seen it. I saw it with some of my students this past weekend. They had a great composition, but they kept shifting and changing because the fluid elements were changing. And subsequently, the photographs weren't as strong because they lost the composition. So you have to trust yourself that once you find it, regardless of whether it's architectural, whether it's human figures, whether it's animals that are fixed elements, trust yourself. Stay in that frame, keep that frame, and allow the fluid things, the things that are changing within that scene, allow them to. And then just trust that, moment by moment by moment, you'll have a variety of different opportunities to make a shot that really takes advantage of everything that you've seen and everything that you've composed. I hope you found that helpful. It was a lesson as much for me as it was for my students this past weekend to remember the importance of sticking to your compositions. It's so easy, to lose sight of that when you're so excited about getting the shot. But I want to tell you about my book, which is called Making Photographs, Developing a Personal Visual Workflow. It embodies all the principles that I teach in my workshops and on these YouTube videos. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to basically study with me, purchase the book. You can get 40% off the list price by visiting the Rocky Nook website and using the promo code Pirello40. And there you'll get 40% off the soft cover or the ebook, or if you want, you can get both. And check it out. And if you like what you're reading there, please write a review on either the Rocky Nook site or on Amazon, as it really will help me. And if you've never heard of the Candid Frame is a podcast in which I interview photographers about their work and career. And I've been doing it for 13 years. And personally, I think it's the best show of its type anywhere. And you'll get great insights into what it means to lead a photographic life, not just if you're a street photographer, but if you're a portrait photographer, a fine art photographer, a landscape photographer. I've interviewed them all. And our latest interview is with India Beal, and she is a conceptual fine art photographer who explores issues of race, body image, sexuality, and it was a really fun conversation. And I think even if you're not into that kind of photography, I think you'll enjoy the conversation. And you can find out more by visiting thecandidframe.com. And if you like what you're seeing in these videos, please give us a thumbs up, click on my face, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.